no consequence to us at a soul level or even in the physical domain. No consequence. That's their goal. Their goal is we want to be God. We want to be the creator. They're trying to usurp the position of the creative force in the universe by taking down natural law and replacing it with their law. That's what the Luciferians and the Satanists are attempting to do. They want to topple natural law. And they're actually very successful and very close to being able to do that. Which is why I don't underestimate these individuals at all. And I have respect for them as an enemy. And so should everybody else. Because they're the most intellectual people walking in the world. While I wouldn't say that they have true intelligence, so few people do on either side of the spiritual battle. They are very intellectual and very well-read individuals, and they do understand natural law. They know that it's in place and how it works. And that's why they're trying to insulate themselves from the consequences, because they're trying to become God. And they do that by getting other people to carry out their behavior for them. They don't actually do the action. And therefore the karmic brunt of the consequences is not theirs. Again, people need to understand who bears the brunt of moral culpability, the order giver or the order follower. Well, these Satanists, more likely than not, never actually did physical harm to someone else. They're getting other people to do that dirty work for them. And hence why they call the military and the police their dogs, because they're on the chain and following the command. They'll sit when they tell them to sit, they'll speak when they tell them to speak, eat when they tell them to eat, attack when they tell them to attack. Therefore, they consider them their animals, their pets. They're two phrases that Satanists, in my presence, when I was involved with this, called the military were our pets and our dogs. That's it. Never referred to them as military men, military women, never referred to them as the armed forces, never. Our dogs. Never said the police department, the police forces, the law enforcement officers, never once referred to them as any of those things. They called them our dogs, because that's what they think of, people who do that job. They are our order-following dogs. We have them well-trained. And also told me, you think you're going to tell people and they're going to accept that from you? They said if we came forward and told them that we're their owners, they wouldn't accept it from us. That's how perfectly programmed they are. And they're right. They were right. I can admit when I'm wrong. I'm telling you, they told me exactly what the truth was. So in a way, I don't really have a lot of built-up anger and resentment and hostility toward them, okay, because they are honest about what they're doing. They're very honest. It's a lot different than a person who says, I think I'm doing the right thing, and yet they're carrying out the work of these psychopaths, these madmen. I have a lot more bitterness and resentment against those people because they have the gall and the audacity to say they're doing something that's right. And they don't know the first thing about right. To somebody with a totally black, sick heart that wants to do evil and is telling people the truth about how they're doing it, I actually have quite a bit more respect. And guess what? I don't really care what you think about that. I don't care whether you think I'm wrong for thinking that way. I can respect that level of unity in consciousness. So I don't have a lot of ill will against them or want to see anything bad happen to them because they're not the ones who are doing it. They're not the ones taking the action. The police are. They're the ones who are following these lunatics' orders. Because they're in a state of chronically imbalanced brain hemispherical action. They're both imbalanced in the left and the right brain because the police want to follow orders. That's right brain imbalance. They're imbalanced in the right brain as well as the left. Their brain's just totally destroyed. They want to be somebody's master, but they're someone else's slave at the same time. And that's what evil really wants. They want everybody to be a master and a slave simultaneously because they just want the perpetuation of master-slave think in one form or another. They want the perpetuation of slavery. So these people told people in these grottos that we are going to be putting forward tons of deception. We're going to flood the market with deception about these concepts so that people can't discover the truth about them. And they did it. They didn't just say that they were going to do it, they did it. And I'll bet you they threw a lot of this information right into people's hands and say, here, put this out, this is what people want to hear, you'll make a killing. You'll make a ton of money doing it. They were behind it. Guaranteed. Guaranteed a lot of these New Age gurus who write all this crap that they write, they're not even really writing it themselves. They've been given the idea, like has planted a seed, and then, you know, the dark occultist steps back into the shadow after giving them the idea, and then they pen the deception. That's how it works. But they said that there would be a huge, massive influx in New Age thought that was a total deception, telling people erroneous notions about how the laws of attraction work and how basically creating your reality work. And people have swallowed it hook, line, and sinker, and they need a hose and a funnel to shovel it down the gullet fast enough. That's how naive these people are. Which it always makes me laugh hilariously when people call me a New Ager. I don't know what you're listening to. You're in the Twilight Zone or something. You know? You know what it is? It's what I call the 5-second commenter. They watch 5 seconds of a video clip about something that I said, immediately related in their mind, have never listened to one podcast in its entirety, and then boom, let me make my ill-informed comment from this completely erroneous thin slice, because I don't have a brain that recognizes patterns. So I'm going to actually look at this tiny little 5-second or 30-second thin slice, and I'm going to say I know everything there is to know about everything this individual has ever said and call him a New Ager as a result. It's a bunch of clowns. A bunch of total clowns who don't know how to think. And think they know something when they know exactly nothing. So let's move on. The way their mind control works, these controllers, is through one simple concept that I've already basically introduced. It's called dialectics. We're on slide number 8 now. Dialectics are false choices. You're giving somebody a limited set of choices that are not the only choices that are available to them, but you're telling them that's all that exists. So they will make a choice that is a false choice that leads to the same place that you wanted them to go all along. The mother who wants their child to just eat a helping of vegetables at dinner, and the child doesn't like to eat his vegetables, says, do you want carrots or do you want peas tonight? And the child thinks, oh, I'm being given a choice. I can make this decision for myself like a big boy. Let me take the carrots because I like them better than peas. They're a little better tasting to me. Well, the mother didn't care what he chooses as long as he gets a serving of his vegetables. That's it. So that's a dialectic. And that's what we're seeing with government. That you're presenting somebody a choice that always leads to being ruled. And ultimately to being killed or have violence done to you. So this picture here is a little political cartoon about Republicans going one side, Democrats going the other side, and it's a cow being led to the slaughterhouse. It doesn't matter which way he goes in, it all leads to the same place. The illusion of free choice when it comes to a dialectical choice. That doesn't mean illusion of free choice at a mass cosmic level. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about controllers want to give people a choice that they say is a choice, but it's no choice at all. It's a false choice. The words I put there on slide number 9, false choice. That's what dialectics should be seen as. You're giving someone a choice that isn't a real choice. You're not really exercising choice to choose something different. It's like saying, do you want wine, beer, or whiskey? Well, if you don't want alcohol, you don't want any of those things. seltzer water. You might want some filtered water, you know? You might want a cup of tea. There's other choices than those three things, which you're being presented with. Say, do you want wine, beer, or whiskey? Well, I don't want any of those things. Well, you have to choose between one of them. That's a dialectic at work. Dialectic as a word comes from the Greek preposition dia, which means through or by way of, and the Latin noun lectus, which means choice. And that's how dialectics operate, by way of choice, by giving people a false choice. And as we're going to see, the New Age movement is another one of these dialectics. It's a false choice. Well, it's saying, well, you didn't like these religions, you know? You didn't like Hinduism, Taoism, Buddhism, Shintoism, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, etc. You didn't like any of those. So, here's another choice. And they're telling you it's not a religion. But it's a religion. It's absolutely a religion. And there's a lot of people trapped in it. A lot of people are trapped in it. They don't even understand it's a trap. They've bought these notions and they're tied to them, and that's their belief system, and it doesn't matter if evidence can be shown that it's not true. I'm tied to that belief. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be practical in the real world. That's a belief. I'm sticking with it, and that's it. So let's move on to slide number 10. We'll start to look at how these mind-controlled dialectics work in the world. There's two overarching dialectics, false choices, that they want to keep people in. For the chronically left-brained, you have to continue to be believing in government. Government is the first dialectic. It works through the left brain and binds the right brain out of the way. Because it's all about being a dominator, okay? It's all about maintaining control over other people. And compassion doesn't really enter into this. Creativity certainly doesn't enter into it. Government creates nothing. Government exerts control through violence over people who disobey it. Whether what they're commanding is morally right or wrong, it doesn't matter to them. It's called our way or the highway. If you don't obey, violence is done. And anybody who doesn't see it as that simple, you're wrong. You're not perceiving things properly. There's something wrong with your brain. I don't really care how much offense you want to take at that. Go right ahead. That's the truth. Government works through the left brain. It binds the right brain out of the way. It is based upon the erroneous and dogmatic belief, not reality, not truth, but a belief. Okay? And as such, it is also a religion. Government is a religion. So see, when it really boils down to all of this, the whole problem is belief and religion. This is what they did to people in the past. They dissuaded them away from looking into truth and tried to convince people truth doesn't even exist. You cannot really ever know. Solipsism in general. So formulate a belief and an opinion, and that's what you want to hold on to. When it's all nonsense and it's all religion. We got to throw opinions away. We got to throw beliefs away. The only thing you need to believe in is that the truth can be discovered, and then go out and do it. Because it's there and it's staring us in the face and we're ignoring it, and as a result of that ignorance, we're already in a cage. Not going into a cage, we're going into the slaughterhouse next. And let me tell you, a lot of people will resist it. And there's going to be slaughter on both sides if we don't wake up. Because they're not going to put the American citizens into the slaughterhouse easily. Not without consequence and not without resistance. You can bet your ass on that. So it's based on this dogmatic belief. A religious belief. Dogmatic belief is religious belief. That there is such a thing as authority that is vested in certain human beings, which gives to those human beings special rights, quote-unquote rights. They're not really rights. They think that they're rights which others do not possess. People who believe in government believe that certain people have rights that other people don't have. And I don't care how you want to twist it, word it, or justify it. That is what the belief in government is. The belief that some people have rights that other people don't possess. When the truth is, everybody has the same rights, because rights do not exist in the perceptions of man. They exist in nature. They exist objectively and independently of man in reality. Therefore, a right can never be turned into a wrong, and a wrong can never be turned into a right. So, next slide is slide number 11. The left brain form of imbalance eventually creates psychopathic tendencies. When we stay in this state, we become at least a secondary psychopath. Now, I'm not saying you can become a primary psychopath. I'm saying, yeah, that's what we become, a secondary psychopath. Even in people who are not born psychopaths, a born psychopath is called a primary psychopath. They have psychopathy from birth. There's something broken in the human genome that actually creates born psychopaths in about 1% or less of the I think it's less than 1% of the population. That number is not accurately scientifically determined. But I would place the number at less than 1%. However, secondary psychopaths probably comprise over 10% of our society. And I'm being generous. I'm being kind in saying it's that low of a number. It's probably a lot higher than that. I'm trying to give people, not make people totally shut down and saying that my guesstimate is around 10%. So this form of left brain imbalance creates psychopathic tendencies, leading some to the belief that they have the right to rule over others through violence, that they can do violence unaccosted, that they can do violence unchallenged, because they have special rights that other people don't have. I can do this and not be punished, whereas somebody else does this and they'll be punished or jailed. Like the nerve of these sick psychopathic thugs that dared to put me and my wife in handcuffs for speaking and communicating to people with information. They think they have a right to do that, when if somebody tried to do it to them, they'd call it assault. Well, that's what was done to us. They're the criminal. They assaulted us. They don't have any special rights that other people don't have to say you may not speak or peacefully engage people with information just because they're wearing a uniform and a badge. It doesn't give you a right that doesn't exist for another person. Are you insane? Is anybody insane for even believing that could be? To believe that claim is a form of insanity. Anybody who believes that claim is themselves insane. Themselves, their brain is broken and not functioning properly. So, let's look at the opposite dialectic. The dialectic that plays off against the left brain form of the dialectic. This is the right brain dialectic, which is called religion. Slide number 12. Religion is the opposite dynamic in the mind from government. Okay? Government is such as a positive form of religion, and it's disgusting. Righteous anger and unchanneled anger is counterproductive with, together, part of. No. Go and meditate on it for hours and hours and hours until you finally accept this is your lot in life, slave. And that's what the New Age version, the New Age variant of meditation. So I put here the example that natural law is like a huge locomotive. And what people are like is, this futile moron who's going to stand on the tracks when this is getting ready to mow him down at, 150 miles an hour. Ideologically involved. That's the first step. Make it clear, this is wrong and I'm saying no, and I'm not going to listen to your coercion. I'm not going to accept your coercion. Who's in control of all of it. And the child wants to believe that because they're naive. They want to believe everything's just going to magically be okay and they're going to be insulated from it. Intuition, creativity, artistic, holistic, compassionate thought possible. The neocortex of the brain has two hemispheres. The left brain hemisphere, right here, largely facilitates logical and scientific thought. And again, I say largely. This is a generalized model. It doesn't mean any time you're in logical or scientific thought, only the left brain is active. That would be an oversimplification. Okay? So again, keep in mind, this is just a simplified model of neuroscience. It's not the be-all and end-all of it. Okay? So the left brain facilitates logical and scientific thought, while the right brain here facilitates creativity and compassion, emotion, intuition, etc. So what happens if we're only living in our left brains? If we're chronically engaged in the logical, scientific, mathematical, linear type thought, and never really turning on the creative, intuitive, or compassionate thought that is facilitated by the right brain hemisphere? Well, something happens. The whole neocortex starts to become destabilized because it's not in a state of balance. So if a human being's left brain hemisphere becomes chronically dominant, the R complex of the whole brain construct, right, will take over the executive function of the whole brain that is intended to be controlled by the higher brain, the human brain, the neocortex. Emotions will become suppressed because the right brain isn't working and the limbic system will not work as effectively. And the person will become ruled by total selfishness and base desires. And they will develop a personality that is based in domination and control. Now, I call that master think. Because again, the powers that should not be, the controllers of this world, want a world of masters and slaves. Okay, they want those dynamics to play off against each other. So they want a lot of people in left brain imbalance, and they want a lot of people in right brain imbalance. That's how they can have a world of slavery. All right? What happens if the opposite is true? What happens if we're always living in the right brain, and we never engage the logical processor, okay, that filters information and weeds out logical inconsistencies? Well, what we'll get is the opposite modality of thought. We'll get what I call slave think. If a human being's right brain hemisphere becomes chronically dominant, the limbic system will take over executive function of the brain instead of the neocortex. Okay, because the neocortex is imbalanced, so it reroutes or shunts executive function to another construct of the brain, in this case the midbrain, which controls emotions. The R complex will basically shut down. That's what controls our instinct and survival mechanisms, our fight and flight response. Defense and survival instincts will become suppressed, and the person will be ruled by their emotions and develop a personality based in submissiveness and naivete, characteristics of religious thought, and particularly New Age thought. Okay? Laying down to control, laying down to domination, what I call slave think. If both brain hemispheres are in balance, okay, what develops is what I call free think. Okay? When they're in balance, the neocortex operates in its proper role as the executive command center of the whole brain. And that's where true intelligence is born. And when I say true intelligence, if you just break down the word intelligence, people in the Western world in particular think intelligence is equated with intellect. It is not. Intellect is not intelligence. Intellect is half of intelligence. The other half is the generative capacity. That's why it's called intelligence. Intella is intellect. Gens is the generative capacity of the brain, or in other words, the creative capacity. The word generare in Latin as a verb means to create. So the creative capacity of the brain is the right brain, what the right brain hemisphere makes possible. Intellect is largely facilitated through the left brain. Left brain intellect is not intelligence. So when I say to people, scientists in many cases don't have a drop of intelligence. They look at me like that's a weird thing to say, but it's absolutely true. Because most scientists are totally trapped in the left brain intellect and don't have the right brain creative capacities turned on at all. So that's not real intelligence. That's not holistic intelligence. There's no balance in that, okay? So the balance is what this is all about. Intellect, which is very important, okay? Logical processing plus intuition, creativity, and compassion, which is about the heart, okay? That's real intelligence. Unfortunately, most of humanity is trapped in what I call the mental schism, where they're totally imbalanced toward one brain hemisphere or another, and that imbalanced dynamic is held in place through mind control. The intellect, the masculine component of consciousness, if that's way too overused and we're always living in that state of imbalance, if that part of the personality or that part of the brain is chronically dominant, then what manifests are conditions like rigid skepticism, not taking in any new information or evidence, okay? What I call scientism. This is the worship of science as a religion, as the only possible medium for truth to be known, okay? Atheism, solipsism, moral relativism, which we're going to talk a lot about later, social Darwinism, eugenics, and authoritarianism. And then if we're in total right brain imbalance toward the feminine hemisphere of the brain, if that part of the brain is chronically dominant and we have no balance with the left brain as well, will manifest conditions in personality such as total naivete, blind belief, religious extremism, just being a blind follower or believer. Solipsism can also manifest when you're in right brain imbalance, just as left brain imbalance. Unworthiness, self-loathing, addictive personalities fall into this category of the brain as well. And then perhaps most dangerous, following orders and being a willing slave, not resisting when there's dominance that is being exerted over you by others. So this knowing the true self is about getting out of those mental schisms. You're not in one of those forms of imbalance or the other. You're in holistic thought, or what I call free think. What will also keep you in a state of being able to be controlled and not knowing the true self is a worldview schism. And again, too many people are in one of these sides or another as well. The worldview of randomness, that everything is just a cosmic accident. The universe is a grand accident. There's no creator. There's no underlying intelligence in nature. Okay? Everything was just a cosmic accident for no purpose. There's no such thing as the spirit. There's no such thing as morals that are true, that are objective. There's no such thing as natural law, which we're going to talk about a lot. There's no purpose to existence other than to continue to exist. Survival. What does that sound like? Somebody who's rooted in the R complex of the brain because of their left brain hemispherical imbalance. Hallmarks of scientism, hallmarks of atheism, hallmarks of totalitarianism. The opposite form of worldview schism imbalance is determinism. This is where you have extreme religionist thought. God controls everything in creation. Nothing happens unless God wills it to happen. All occurrences are ultimately preordained. Free will doesn't exist. That's an illusion. God controls everything. Since God controls everything, hey, why bother trying to change anything? Your will is not going to be done. The Creator's will only is going to be done. So no change can really be brought about. Action, therefore, is meaningless in this worldview. And these are hallmarks of religious extremism and what I call slave think. People who believe it's just always been this way, it is this way now, it's always going to be this way, accept your chains. Very, very, very dangerous line of thought, just as the left brain imbalance and worldview is just as dangerous. The truth lies in the balance point, in the middle. Knowing, and this is part of knowing who we are, because we are part of this universe and how it works, okay? There is a deterministic